Good day, my fellow Americans, and good people of the world. Today, I would like to address you in regards to the slow encroaching desensitization of radicalization in America. The reason why I am addressing this is because it has been brought to my attention that my recent statements in terms of response to the vice presidential debate, there were some statements that I made upon further reflection that seemed to be me normalizing some pretty bad behaviors while still, standing to, speak on with, firm, boundaries in terms of what my soul print values are. I caught myself excusing some bad behavior in order to reconfirm my beliefs, in particular around free speech. And this is an interesting topic for me because free speech is extremely important in terms of soul print values for me. And I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to understand the importance of this freedom, because to me it's very much like the the last freedom that we have, which is that our choice for ourselves to determine how we are going to respond or react to something. And when you start having, I guess, one of the terms would be thought police, people coming in saying, what to think and what to feel is, and what to do, these are violations of that core sense of personhood that each of us have. And to me, that's part of our dominion. But I do understand that when we normalize certain types of behavior, it ennobles people to continue to behave that way, which was another point that I brought up in that same discussion addressing the debate was, the idea of having not just the right to be able to speak your mind, but the right for you to be socially sanctioned in society. Like, we need to be able to have healthy debates with one another. And then when you do something that is an egregious offense against like the norms of civil society and the things that like uphold our domestic order, like you need to be able to be sanctioned. And that should be something that we mostly do in, the sociological terms of our dialogue with one another. You're in a conversation with somebody, they say something that is inappropriate, or crude and cruel, we should stand up against that. It reminds me of this really great TED Talk that I once listened to. And this gentleman was speaking about having to be role model to young African American youth. It's like we have to be good role models to these young men, because if these young men see us disrespecting women, they're going to think that's okay. And then they're going to go off and do that too. And then, we have to teach boys how to be men and teach them that being manly, masculinity, is not about being an aggressor. It's about being assertive and strong. And the whole point is that strength isn't who, you can harm or how many people you can push down. Strength is more in terms of like self-control. And probably one of the most key points to a person's character is their capacity for self-control. And when you have that self-control, that's like key core to your character, and then you're learning and instilling like soul print core values that help you to be an appropriate actor and agent and commander and strategizer in your life, in your state of being. And so wanting to find that appropriate orientation with free speech, where you're able to express yourself and your thoughts and your opinions, and to be able to, inform people of information that you've gathered and collected through various sources, and to inspire dialogue and conversation and welcome that and engage with people. Like, we need to have that sort of stuff, but when we're just infighting with one another, yelling and screaming, that's not getting us anywhere. So we need to be able to have a conversation, and conversation requires a mutuality in respects. And then also, making sure that there's boundaries within that. Like, you can't do that in polite conversation. And we really need to reconfirm how important polite conversation is. We don't have to worry about walking on eggshells with everybody, in terms of, you don't want to say something to offend somebody and then take it the wrong way. And then all of a sudden, there's a molehill turn into a mountain, and you have to deal with, their misinterpretation. Most conflicts, and quite frankly, all conflicts in society, are due to misunderstandings. But it is much easier to be able to come into an understanding when you have a mutual respect. And once you have respect established and you develop rapport and that respect builds, trust takes care of itself in that situation. And then when you can enter a state of trust with somebody in a conversation, that's where that dialogue turns into something constructive that we can actually build upon. That's the point within like the sphere of influence where our traditions are formed, our norms are reinforced. It's where we understand what's viable in terms of, what can we say to, broaden our understanding in an area. And to me, it's really frustrating when I hear academics or, scientists or professionals engage in this really debased level of conversation, and communication, where they're communicating something, they're not really just conversing anything. They're not getting anything of consequential, intentful meaning across. There's communicating these, symbols and these signs and these ideas and ideals, but, what are you really getting at in that regards? So the problem that I had was that, wanting to make sure that there is a sense of, justice in terms of the legitimization of the expressions that one makes, because that's part of them practicing in the development of character and doing the good work of becoming their best version, and meeting with challenges from, other people is how we grow together in maturity. And so it's an important thing that we do that, and it's a lifelong process. It's because it's part of how we learn. So it's important to be able to have free speech. That's the most important part of of anything to be accomplished is to be able to have free speech, but there has to be some sort of limitations in terms of what we deem is appropriate in polite conversation, and that we should really engage in polite conversation and choose that type of communication before, these debased, lesser than decent, non-civil, non-important integration of bad behavior into our traditions of interacting and communing with one another. And to me, it's just like we have to be able to be disciplined in our conversations and our expressions. And we need to be able to, sanction one another so we understand, what is right, because we know what we should do and, when we should do it, sort of thing. We understand the right time, the right ways, the right reasons. But we won't ever get to that point if we're engaging with one another in these ways that are not right, that it's this wrong sense of wrongness with one another. We're treating each other the wrong way. We're talking about something in the wrong way. We're, making something important in the wrong way, giving it more value than it really has, these sorts of things. And to me, it's personally, deeply, profoundly changing in one's life when you are silenced. It's one of the most difficult things to challenge with, because you not having somewhere to express yourself is really inhibiting of the development of your character. It hinders your progress. You cease to be learning. And so it's important to be able to have those types of opportunities with one another to converse. And that's kind of where I was going with the idea of wanting to, promote the idea we should have like social media spaces where people can come in and have different types of discussions. But I think that that's why we have so many different versions of social media. Because there's, different features and user interfaces and different platform mechanizations and user capabilities and these sorts of things that each platform provides. And then you find different types of people there that are, interested in the aspects of how that platform is an executable function for, self-expression. So, but the fact that there's so many different kinds, you can kind of go to different places to see different people and engage with them in different ways. And I've spent time trying to understand different, versions of social media and try to find the voice, the way to one might express their voice in those ways and in those areas. And I have found every single social media to fall completely short of, what would really, truly, in essence, capture what it is that we need in order to, have, consequential, healthy, interoperable type of human connections. Like, in the most general sense, the authentic and genuine human connections. And out of all the social medias I've ever been on, Twitter was my favorite. Unfortunately, it no longer exists. And what's replaced it has become something just there's not a lot of really good things to say about that space. And it seems kind of like this just profit-seeking machine, an attention-seeking machine, and it really just brings out the worst humanity in people. And I think it's in a direct reflection of its owner, who is trying to create it in their image. And it really just shows how much they have fallen from grace, who they used to be, in terms of, how they chose to show up in the world and what they said that they stood for with integrities, and then coming to find that they were a really weak-minded individual whose character was not solid, stable, honest, kind, and they were very susceptible. And so it brings into the, dangerous realm of, what happens with people when they get power. It really does corrupt a person. And then, of course, the question is, like, how much power does it take to corrupt a person? And I think that's kind of what the realm of that particular social media has really helped to point out, is that these people on that site have been given the power of, ennobled power to bring forth the worst version of themselves, because that's drama and craze is what, gets more attention and more clicks and more responses, and it's a tool of distraction, a legitimate tool of distraction. And to me, I've always felt that social media was supposed to be instrumental in bringing about these genuine human connections through genuine human conversations, to help to bring out the best in us, help us to, to learn the technical aspects of the digital realm and how to execute a version of ourselves in that, in a full extension that is this artisanal expression of our personality, and in a formative place, like a foundry for growing and developing our character in the strongest terms of resiliency, because you are faced with, the world. But you can't do that when you're surrounded by people that are there to intentionally harm you and to intentionally exploit you and to intentionally cause you to be disturbed and to reinforce to you this sense that you don't belong. And the fact that there's so much child exploitation on every single social media site is one of the most disgusting and deplorable things in existence. And to me, it's like, why hasn't good humanity kicked in yet to say that we are not going to allow the existence of something that would be used in such a way? And then that comes into this gray area of, well, how far can we go to intervene on behalf of the best interest of protecting innocence in society, that it would prevent others from being able to seek self-expression for themselves, given there are a tremendous amount of good actors that are involved with these bad actors in the same space, benefiting on the same platform. So do you punish everybody for the, nefarious intent of these portions of bad actors? And it's a tough question, but for me, I say it's not considered punishment when we are accepting responsibility for the stewardship of humanity. And I believe that there's not necessarily a need to call for all social media to be, removed, but that if it cannot be built from the ground up with having these security measures in place, and there's no consequences that these companies face for their inaction on these important matters, then we're allowing those people to be complicit in these terrible things, often crimes against children. And then against other people. I mean, there's bots that steal people's monies, and there are people that steal people's identities, death threats, and sometimes violence is instigated on social media, and the call to action is initiated there, and then it has real world consequences. And you see that there's a tendency for people who are about to do bad things to go use social media as this, announcing to the world. And it makes me wonder, if they didn't have that tool, whether or not they would be so emboldened to go do that. So it's a tough one. It really is. But I think that the only real true, lasting solution would be for everybody to agree that there needs to be consequences, and that there needs to be swift action, enforceable rules and regulations, and that it needs to be handled by a system that's an anti-corrupt system, and that accountabilities are, measured in strikes. You can only mess up so many times before we just have to remove your capacity to do this anymore, because you've proven to us that you don't have what it takes to do this in a just, right, reasonable, and fair way. And yeah, there will be people that are not going to have that platform to share their voice on anymore. And that's unfortunate, but I really do believe that once we put that consequence out there, something better is going to emerge. And right now, that it's right there under the surface, that new and amazing innovation that is going to revolutionize human connections and revolutionize human digital expressions. But it can't come out because these other things are crowding the space. They're kind of like weeds that are preventing from new growth coming in. And so once we start having regulations, it will weed out the unlikelies in terms of what's going to actually get us to where we would want to be. And I know that that's the reason why I don't participate in social media. The closest that I do come to it is using YouTube, um, because it is uh, enough removed from um, me having to engage with people, um, that producing content and placing it here is a place where I can kind of leave this time capsule of information. Because I'm not trying to really socially engage with people here. I'm really just trying to leave you in wonder about what I mention for now. And even at that, this is only for now, because I will no longer be creating content on here um, soon. It and and soon is in relative terms to my own progress points, but um, I will be moving on to much better things. And so for now, I have this space to be able to leave this time capsule of information to leave you in wonder about what I mention, and with the intent to inform and um, to hopefully role model something that is different than what I see experienced in a lot of other places. Like, I'm not trying to, get in line with algorithms on this platform, because I've read them and they're terrible. They take you some god awful, horrible rabbit holes, and I don't want to be caught up in the streams of that. I'm so obscure and peculiar in my offerings that I know the likelihood of me being in those algorithms caught is very limited, and that's the way I like it. It's not that I'm not trying to reach a wide audience of people. I just know that people are not interested in the things that I say, in terms of those who like to doom scroll, or who are looking for the next crazy person that's gonna dance on like a monkey on a stage in order to make you feel like you have been entertained. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to be able to, establish my voice and my presence, and to be able to, uh, attract my people, those who are like minded individuals who think that it really is our personal and collective responsibility to make sure that the future outcomes that we're facing are the result of positive choices that we make today. And to help people recognize that, everything is connected, and we are on a continuum. And sometimes it's, depending on who you follow, you're going to see certain types of things come out. And it's kind of interesting, because whenever I direct my work towards involving, you know, I'll say involve others, uh, the result is their responsibilities. And it really helps to see their alignments and their attunements and where their loyalties lie. And those sorts of people that fall in line with them, and where they stand on that continuum in terms of everything's connected and it's bound to come around. And so I use that often to determine what people are my people, because the negative outcome consequences that arise from alignment with a person, and then seeing what unfolds there. And also importantly, like what they bring out in me, what version of me that they bring out, really just kind of like shows, it's important who you choose to integrate with. And I really think that social media has that responsibility. If it's supposed to be there to bring us together with genuine human connections, it should be able to inform us of what our lives will be, what the future holds by the connections that we make. And no social media cares about that right now. They care about distracting people. And for it being such this, great innovation, it's become so industrious. It's like you go in and you experience a platform in these very limited ways. And so it's very easy to see, the interests of people. You can see that human element in it. But it's not a very good record set to the future in a lot of ways. But nevertheless, it's important that people are able to feel that they can express themselves, because that's how they're going to discover who they are and cultivate their character. But people have stopped caring about their character being like this, lifelong schema of their soul print values. And that's a thing that they should be cultivating in terms of like self development. And I think that's why we have a lot of like really just mean people who are like bullies and who like to control and, mock and find it funny to them and entertaining to them to harm other people, and using social media platforms as a tool to do that. And then there's no consequences, so they'll never stop. And the platforms have no consequences, so they're going to allow it to keep happening. And they make money off of engagement regardless of the flavor of it, but it tends to be the drama and craze that draw, more eyes on, because people have been trained for a lot of years with the social media to be invested in doom scrolling. And I know it's because it's that emotional hit that you get. You seek out different things and it gives you this emotional stimuli, but it's a fleeting feeling. It doesn't last very long, and that's why people spend more time there, because they're seeking out the next, hit. It's like a drug. It's addictive. And I know because I've had that experience myself. It wasn't until I was pretty much forcefully removed from my former, presence on social media, that I realized like how much I had been addicted to the experiences that I was having there, and how much that was keeping me from being able to experience like genuine experiences of developing emotional ties and connections in long-standing connections, and like having real genuine human connections. And I thought I was cultivating that, and in a lot of ways I did with people, because I found people willing to engage in that intentional way with me. But even those types of connections that I had to lose in that situation. And it was heartbreaking, because these were people that I had genuine love for. Agape love, but love for them, and genuine care and concern. I mean, for a long time after that, I wondered about some of these people who I used to be a confidant to and a companion and a friend, someone they can lean on. I wondered about their lives and how they had to cope with not having that friend there for them. And so it wasn't just a loss for me, it was a loss for them as well. And so those are the sorts of things that make me understand how completely important free speech is. But we got to have a limitation on it where you can't just get away with saying whatever you want. Because, in a lot of my conversations that I have with people, these are real conversations offline, they bring forth these talking points that they've heard on the news, that they heard in a social media point, and it's become the real world conversations offline have become inundated with these references to social media. The news does it. They reference social media. This was said on this social media today or whatever. But it's become this small talk. Like, people aren't talking about real substance things because they're talking about these small little micro events that happen on social media. And I fear for the future of humanity in the sense where people are becoming desensitized to radicalization and being ennobled to increasingly become radical, and then incentivized to become increasingly radical, and not having any source of true fact checking of like helping them touch base with reality. And then other people who are in the silos of that type of group think reinforce each other. And then you get these really extreme expressions of people. And this is why misinformation is really so dangerous, because it's like a game of telephone. One person gets a piece of information that they spread that's false, and then the next person does, and they've inflamed it even more. And then it becomes this entire thing that's experienced across social media, because so many people will see this post or share this post that is, a source of misinformation. And because people have seen so many people like it and repost it, it's spread across, and so people think it must be true because they see it so much. And that's just not the case. And so you have no check and balance system in terms of, what is reality. And there's no accountability. And there's no social civic consequence. And everybody is reducing their thought processes down to these micro sound bites that can fit into a social media post. Like, we're seeing people lose intelligence here. And now everybody wants to bring in artificial intelligence, and people think that these systems are helping us, assisting us in some way, when it's obvious that it's just a continuum on that same negative consequence continuum of reducing the human aspect of things and making humans be like these tools for, propagating this digital space. Like, humans serve a function, not a purpose. And, I don't understand why people are so invested in artificial intelligence, because it is so dehumanizing. So dehumanizing. just as much as social media is dehumanizing. But it seems like it's the natural evolution of that technology. And I really just wish that there would be people who would intentionally design with the right design decisions and build for technologies that would be complementary to humans, that would help humans become superhuman and actualize their best selves. But you don't see that. You know, even people that are trying to hijack a person's brain with a microchip, it's not advancing humans to this superhuman capacity. It's making a human a vehicle for a host. You know? Reminds me of that sci-fi movie Host. It's like genuinely terrifying to think that your entire identity will no longer be your own. And I guess that's what, the technologically advanced culture that we have been immersed into has turned us into. And maybe that is the reason why we see the consequences of people's sense of, freedom of speech has become so important, is because they are losing their sense of self. And the little last bit of, freedoms that humans have is their sense that they're thinking for themselves. They get to choose how they're going to respond to things. And certainly that's the thing that, can't be taken away from you, but it can be replaced. In a sense of like, is it really you that thinks that? Or are you just going with this, mob mentality? Are you, part of this group think? I mean, I've been watching when this especially happens during, political cycles. It's where the most aggregate of information reveals real, true human elements of, how much people fall from grace. But seeing the evolution of a person around their responses to politics is really interesting. I'm not any different than any other human. I have those tendencies as well. This is why, upon reflection, I was like, I need to probably talk about this, because I don't know why I said that I would be okay with there to be social media platforms that just allow people to say whatever they want, when really, in reality, that goes against my honest to God belief that we should have those spaces only if it's a conditional thing, and only if they can serve, the proper intended use of actually being a town square, where everybody can go and talk and meet. And it's just not that. It's not become that. And we need to be able to rein this kind of stuff in. And I think that there's so many negative consequences of humanity that have manifest because of social media. There's been some good things too, but so many bad things. And our technology stripping us of our humanity, it should not be the direction that we're trying to move towards. But listening to the commentary of people who are so wrapped into this, political battle that is being unleashed on every media source there is really revealing. Like, there's people who I used to think were like really persons of character and integrity that are promoting conspiracy theories and spreading lies without, any regard for, proof or fact checking. And you see so much of their emotions tied into it. And And I'm sure that a lot of that is because they have more than just emotion invested in this. Um, but to deceive their fellow Americans and then not have a conscience about that is really, really scary. I reviewed an article that said that Trump once again reiterated his claim that he's going to be a dictator on day one. And it really is, it makes me sad for America that we don't have enough courageous people with integrity who believe in the founding principles of our nation and the original spirit of intent of our founding documents, of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. And in this case, especially the Declaration of Independence, to say, like, we freed ourselves from tyranny. We freed ourselves from the dangers of that type of wielding of power over the people. And to allow somebody to so casually state and declare without consequence, and to be considered still, viable in people's options in terms of deciding a leader. Like, we're in a really bad state in America because there aren't enough people with integrity and courage and honor to say no to that and to call him out on that. And their vested interest has been involved with him, but you know what? Any moment can be a chance to start again and to be a part of, a new story. And I really pray for the good of humanity to be brought out, and every person in their hour of decision, and that they'll see the light. I don't want people to feel that their freedoms are being infringed. But I don't understand why there's people who are concerned about freedom of speech, but not concerned about a man who says he's going to be a dictator, while at the same time saying he's going to persecute those who are in dissent. Like, that's removing freedom of speech. And it's a really dangerous place. It's one thing to, tell people you probably shouldn't be claiming that the use of certain types of products or certain types of medications that are not specifically prescribed for that particular thing to be used to be a cure for something, like in particular COVID. And I understand why the government was reaching out to people, because hey, it's a public health crisis that we're in the middle of right now. And none of us really know exactly what's going on, but infusing confusion to people who are actually into society and into social conversations When people are really desperate to find answers, you're putting people's lives at risk. And while it's going to take time for the experts to really, truly get a whole understanding of everything, we have to be able to trust that the experts are going to be able to help to discover that, because we are giving them the authority to do so. But it's not helpful to tell people to do something that could potentially be harmful. You know, Trump told people that potentially injecting bleach could possibly kill COVID, or that light could do it. And it's a really, really dangerous thing for a president, the one who's supposed to be a guiding voice in times of crisis, to give people such information. And the real problem there was the fact that he was so unwilling to accept experts' advice, and that he was so willing to get information from, unverified sources, and to share that information is even more dangerous. I have no doubt in my mind that there were lives lost because of Trump's actions, and also his inactions. And there were plenty of people that were out there, questioning, what's going on, and trying to figure it out. And it's okay to want to understand, and it's okay to have conversations with one another to, question what is the truth. But it's not okay to create such chaos and confusion that people cannot distinguish what is reality. And I don't understand why people aren't trying to create technologies that can help us to identify what that is. Don't you think it would be really important for us to be able to find a base truth? And the other big thing is like trust. I think the government has a tremendous amount of work as an entity to re-establish the trust that Trump eroded. And I'm really disappointed in the Republican Party for selling its soul, selling out on every one of its soul print values in order to win. I've never considered myself a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. I've always just been a conscious citizen. And I like politics because to me it's philosophy. And it's governance. And I like order and organization and structure, and I like utility, and I like our traditions, and I like executions and viabilities of things, and I like the productivities of society. I like things that are executable and enterprise and invented, and I love the pivotal aspects of a state for strategy, command, agency, and actors. I love those components of it. But in following, politics over the years and seeing it less be about policy and more about a sense of privilege, and their prioritization of statements over actions, and the fact that they don't have clear plans or parameters. They don't create policies with deadlines. They don't stick to a specific and precise purpose of what they're doing. And they don't voice to people what they actually want to change, and how they would go about doing it, and how you want it to turn out, and how you want it to happen, and see it unfold. And policy is supposed to be able to explain things to us. It has to be able to explain everything in a logical and intelligent and specific manner, and that's why I like policy. I like the details. I like the how. But the point of politics lately has just been this complete undermining of reason and abdication of responsibility. And the focus has been on these wins rather than on results and outcomes of specific intentional goals that actually help people. The work in government is supposed to be the great equalizer of society. Government exists to help people, to remember that we have to find new ways and new ideas, new procedures in order to be compatible with one another. And for our compatibility in terms of society has to be compatible with our environments. And not just our environments in terms of our biosphere, but also in terms of our spaces, our life spaces. And it has to be compatible with our economy and our workforce and our capacity to enterprise and our capacity to execute on things, our productivity and the execution of productivity, and our capacity to innovate and to invent. And then in all of the aspects of like what it takes, like institutionalized organization, having mobility and our cities and utilities and housing stock and infrastructure and resources, like all of these things, they matter. And our government is supposed to create policies to make that all work. And it has to be measurable by a specific unit of measure so that we can see that we got the results that we were intending to achieve. Policy needs to be able to be sustainable. It has to be executable. It has to have a directive, and it has to have a storyline. It has to be able to tell us the way of being so that we can live along those terms and conditions. It needs to be applicable at the individual level, in the interdependent level, and the independence level, making sure that, government is understanding of its constitutional limitations and that the ultimate power rests with the people. But you don't see either of the political parties doing that. But you certainly don't see it in the Republican Party right now, because their, conservative values that they used to hold are now just these weaponizations of talking points in order to subvert people's capacity to have liberty. in order to allow for certain pockets of thriving. And it wasn't always that way. I've had, conservative Republican values in terms of how I appreciate policy, and I've had, Democratic, Democrat values. But overall, I don't think that the Democratic or the Republican Party has in a very long time met the needs of now. And I really think that the Democrats ought to be ashamed of themselves for allowing the Republican Party that sold its whole print values to a demagogue and a false idol, for the Democrats to allow them to set the tone of the political realm and the political narrative. What they should have been doing was offering a much better model. And they allowed everybody to think that it's about winning instead of wanting what's best for America. And it really hurts my heart, because my heart sings for the best potential of America. I want America to succeed because I see it as the leader of the free world. I see America as the massive potential to be able to inspire an entire world of stewardship. But we have lost our way as a nation. And it's like we have forgotten that our government is a process that builds upon itself, and that it's what we make it to be. And it's really sad that we've elected so many people who fail the tests of integrity. There was a comment by MGT that she said, of the Republican Party, she said, tried to say something about that the Hurricane Helene was man-made storm, and it was like, I didn't even listen to the whole entire spiel about it because it was just so radically, insanely stupid. And I'm not using that word lightly. But I just, it made me think, well, technically, the climate change that you don't believe in is man-made. And it does cause these tremendously high-powered storms of greater intensity to impact us. So, I guess in this roundabout way, she's not wrong, but she certainly isn't right. And it's that kind of stuff that people get away with saying. I don't even understand how that woman is even in government. I think that she models some of the most terrible aspects of what danger there is when you put an incompetent person in a position of power. And that's very much in the same realm of what I feel Trump is. And it's not to say that she doesn't have redeeming qualities, and it's not to say that she doesn't have some capacity to do good things. And it's not to say that hasn't performed, duties in her role in government. But I do know that she wastes a lot of time distracting and keeping government from functioning appropriately. And she is one of the supporters that ennobles Trump's sense of that he can be a dictator and that it would be okay. And that's really the problem, is we have so many of these politicians that have placated his way of being and just looked the other way, allowed him to be so just vile to them, even specifically, and then for them to turn the other cheek and just let him continue to be a terrible person to them and to others, and and for there to be no consequences to that. I mean, he really is the example of the dangers of free speech, because this man has been ennobled and empowered and enabled for so long to speak falsehoods freely. And I think that we really need to start truly defining what free speech is, in a sense of it shouldn't be the freedom to say whatever you want. It's just like what I think rights are. Freedom of speech is a right. Our rights are not the right to do whatever the heck we want. And so we have the right to do the right thing. And lying to people, deceiving, telling them that you're going to be a dictator and you're going to throw your enemies in prison and, arrest people for dissent. That's not right. That's not just. That's not reasonable. That's not fair. That's not doing the right thing. And so I wanted to make sure that I gave voice to the fact that while it's very important to have free speech, it is really important to understand that it is a right that comes with a responsibility, just like all of our rights. The entire Bill of Rights is about protecting the government from infringing on the people's lives. It's limiting the government and outlining how the people are the ultimate beholders of power. They're the ones that have the power. But that all rights come with responsibilities. And that we have to somehow be able to hold each other to account to that. We have to have some sort of consequences, and there used to be a time when social sanctioning was effective, because we could say, oh my gosh, this person said this terrible, god-awful thing, and that's completely inappropriate, like, a racist slur or something like that. And we would socially sanction them in a negative way and say, you can't say that. But then this whole anti-woke culture thing came up, and then all of a sudden, they're trying to take away our rights by saying that we don't have the right to be racist, or we don't have the right to be, threatening people, or promoting white nationalism as if it's some sort of wholesome thing. Like, to me, the attack on like woke culture and the attack on like diversity, equity, and inclusion Those are signs of the worst of society coming and saying, we're not going to allow you to socially sanction us in a negative way anymore. We want to be able to get away with whatever we want and have no consequences. Because those things, the woke culture was a movement to help people to stay aware of what's happening. It's not be fooled and to not be complicit. Because when you turn a blind eye to these sorts of things, terrible things happen to innocent people. Innocence gets violated, and it's wrong. If humanity is to stand for anything, is to protect innocence. And I do agree, and this is where part of the, protecting free speech is important to me. That went too far in the pendulum swing in terms of, the woke culture. Some people took it way too extreme. And then it really did prevent people from being able to speak out on certain things without being, canceled. And again, that was a tool of social sanctioning, and we need to have that, but there should be limits to that as well. And so, but it was obviously a natural manifestation of the fact that there were so many people that were, saying and doing things that aren't right. And we had to call them out on that. And you have to be able to speak out on those things. But you have to find the right moderator in that regard to make sure nobody goes too far into the extremes. And right now, the result is the huge swing back of the pendulum into the extreme on the right, because the left took it too far in terms of the woke culture. And so it's the product of our own consequences. But it's really sad because there's people that are truly, in the center who are being pulled apart at the seams because, we're attacked by the people on the left and the right because you're not extreme enough for them. And I've seen some really good people who are in the center who are genuine, moderates who have been forced into the other side because of social pressures, or because something happened to them where the woke culture was too extreme to them and tried to cancel them. They're like, well, forget all this, and they just go to the other side. And then they find themselves so caught up in the energy of it all that they get so out of hand and lost in that culture, and there's no escaping that. And there's just nothing that brings people back into center in society. And for me, that's what governance is about. But when you have politicians that are running the government who are polarizing in their positions, the few sane people in the room aren't able to effectively govern because their hands are tied or they're disempowered by those who want to do extreme things. I guess it's my own fault for having the disappointment of the government not living up to my hopes for its highest potential. But I, of course, still hold out hope. I believe in redemption for everybody, even in for the government. But I would really like to be able to see things be able to be brought down back into reality and back into this, comfortable conservation, a comfortable conservative space where, we're able to be free and progressive and, have our liberties, but we respect, the honors of traditional and, I guess, in a sense, ideological um, pathways, because that oftentimes is a consequential part of our culture. But we need to be able to have the right amount of, the traditional and the right amount of the, um, the liberated aspects of things. I do honestly believe that, uh, in terms of our choices for the presidential election this round, um, it is in the best interest of America to vote for Kamala Harris because of the fact that she has integrity and the choices that she's made in her life that have defined her service, her 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 method of service has been that of a person who can be trusted to command the government without making the government more powerful than it needs to be. That she understands the jurisprudence, the where the jurisdiction of the individual is and how much the government can, you know, intercede on the behalf of the people. And I think that she has this moral tone of understanding what is good humanity. And I think that she has the capacity to really listen to the people and to not make everything a spectacle of consequence, of negative consequence. That's what Trump does. He is just a spectacle of negative consequences. And I can see myself as being, a moderate, in my opinion, because of the fact that I'm able to be empathetic of both sides, but not just empathetic, I'm also compassionate, which is empathy plus the desire to act. But I'm also sympathetic, which is understanding this role that is played between an individual and their experience, and to be understanding of where their starting point is. And because of that, I see myself as going into this election as determining who I would be able to do business with. And the only candidate who is just, right, reasonable, fair is Kamala Harris. And I know it would be in my best interest to help her to succeed at being president, because that would give America the best chances to succeed. And to me, that's ultimately what's most important. You hear a lot of people say, country over party sort of thing. And it's kind of a dangerous statement to make because, again, that pendulum swing can go way too far in one direction. But for me, what's important about it is to say that without America being America, then there's nothing that makes us Americans. And if there's nothing that makes us Americans, then we have nothing that gives us a sense of pride in our country. When we don't have a sense of pride in our country, then we lose a lot of our identity in terms of who we are. And if we lose identity of who we are, then we don't understand where we stand in the world. And if you don't understand where you stand on things, it's very easy to sway you and move you in a different direction, throw you off track. And Trump has taken the Republican Party far away from its entire purpose, its proper intended use. And he's hijacked the party and turned it into his own, and it's a thing that I read, because it was like, is Trump, a dictator? And, is he a fascist? And in one of the statements somebody tried to, that I read, this person was trying to say that Trump can't be a fascist because, fascist creates their own political party. And then, and then tries to nullify the other parties. But Trump didn't have to do that. He tried to do that, but then the Republicans were so desperate for winning that they were willing to stoop to any low and do whatever it takes, including to not listen to the voice of reason or conscience. And they sold out their soul print values to this man who they thought was going to be able to deliver a win for them. And he did, but he stole everything from them that mattered, and the consequences were severe. Not worth it in the end. But now they're so desperate to hold on to power. And I don't know if they'll ever be able to recover. But, Trump didn't have to make his own party. He just, like a virus, went in and hijacked an existing one, the one that was the weakest, obviously, easiest to exploit, and became host of it. And now everybody has been infected with the mind virus of this Trumpian MAGA movement. They try to say there's a woke mind virus and that's so bad. Well, there's a MAGA mind virus. And it's just terribly dangerous. We need to break away from all of that and find our way back into the core of our good humanity. A lot of my work has to do with defining the human element, and to me the human element is like this sphere that we're all standing on, and everybody has their place, and we're standing on the surface of this sphere and we're looking up at the sky, and every one of us has our own little piece of the sky that we can see. We can only see so much and so far, and the point is to inform one another of what our piece of the sky looks like. And so others who can see part of what you see and part of what other people can see that you can't see because there's so many degrees of separation removed. And we start to see the overlaps, and we're able to distinguish what makes the sky. And the sky is, this atmosphere of our truth and reality. And so if we are not sharing the truth with one another, then we're not able to distinguish what is real. And it's important for us to be able to have the freedom to speak our truth and to live from the best truth we know, and to continuously learn the understanding of truth, because we become, we enlighten ourselves and we lose our ignorance over things, and we become more understanding as we learn and as we expose ourselves to new things and new perspectives and new propositions and new orientations. We gain these perspectives, we gain our proposition begins to be more aware to us in terms of like where we are on that sphere and what part of the sky we get to see. And then we interconnect and have genuine human connections with one another to share that truth with one another, so we can get a clear picture of the bigger picture of what's going on here. It's super important for us to be able to do that. And I really wish the government would see its role of interceding on behalf of the people to help us to understand that that's the point of the exercise. That's why we're here, guys. We have a purpose in this place, and we have an obligation and a duty to one another to be that positive contributor and participant to society. But we need to know that we can trust one another, and the government can intercede on our behalf in that as well. Help to become a moderator to help us to understand what is the truth. But we certainly can't do that if people are constantly trying to make us question authority and constantly making us question, whether or not the government can be trusted. And I understand that we need to question, if need be, we need to be able to speak truth to power. But that's the point. We should be speaking truth, not lies. And so it's a real genuine hope that I have that somehow humanity will be able to work out the means to really trust one another and to help reveal the truth to each and every one of ourselves, and to start utilizing that with intelligence as like the keystone, fundamental building block of what we're able to do in terms of consequence of building out the future, is establishing that truth and base reality with one another, and to start holding each other to account with like true character development and integrities. Encourage one another in our experiences and our encounters and our engagements with one another to be trustworthy, for people to know that they will be able to know that you are integrity bound in your character. And for us to know that we're working together to reveal truths, which are things as they are, and ultimately to know that we are living out our authenticity. We're living for truth, and we're living from the best truths that we know, and that we're trying to be trustworthy in the sense that people will know that we always have the best interests of someone at heart. And that we have fidelity, that we're uncompromising. We have the will to be true to who we are as a person. And that we are willing to be role models that we reflect character traits that others would want to embrace themselves, and to inspire and motivate others to build those traits in themselves. And to speak of truth and beauty, reflecting a model of radiance and confidence and self-acceptance and acceptance of others and humility and loveliness and admirable qualities. And ultimately, what I hope to be able to inspire humanity in America and every individual is to become stewards, where we all understand, like, the vision of the future is in our hands. It's our responsibility. We have a duty to ourselves and each other to be stewards. And that means to roll up our sleeves and take care of the world, take care of ourselves, take care of our families, take care of each other. And we can't do that if we're so busy infighting with one another. I just wanted to make it abundantly clear that it's a difficult place to be in the gray area, because I understand the dynamic sides that are here in terms of the human element, and I understand where people are coming from and where they stand. I'm empathetic of where they stand on that sphere of the human element. And I'm compassionate because I want to act on that. And I have sympathy for them because I understand where their starting point is. But to know that I'm limited in my capacity to affect change because I'm a nameless nobody from small town America. But I know that that's about to change, and I see the opportunity for me to be able to become the leader that I need to be in order to bring about the future that I want to see, and write the new story that I want to be a part of. And that potential for securing that future rests in electing Kamala Harris as president. And I pray for the realization to come to people, for them to see the truth, and for them to understand the potential that's there too, and to vote in the best interests of all people involved, to vote in the way that really can build friendships and lasting bonds and relationships. Vote for truth because it's true. Vote because it's just right, reasonable, and fair. And not just because it stirs up your sense of empowerment, makes you feel you're in some righteous fight, but just really be logical about it and sensible and reasonable. Aim for reasons. It's fundamentally important. And I ask also, as wanting to build a future of welfaring stewardship, that I ask for those people who that resonates with, that vibe, that frequency, for those people to recognize the potential. And voting for Kamala brings out the best chances for success for welfaring stewardship future. And no matter what, as my fellow Americans in a constitutionally limited democratic republic where all people have the right to vote as citizens of their nation, that I respect the decisions that everybody makes. And with that, I'm grateful for your valuable time and attention. I understand this has been a very long video, and talking at length has been necessary to kind of get it all out there in space in terms of what I was really thinking about. And I'm thinking about free speech and why we have laws and why we have rules and why we have boundaries. Because of the fact that all rights come with responsibilities. And it's important that we have anti-corruption mechanisms in society, not just for government, especially for government, because that's how we're able to move into trusting the government, but also for people. Because I've seen a lot of really good people turn into something completely unrecognizable on the surface, and the personality facade and masks that they put on may come across as being integrity bound, still who they are. But when you look into the more than words, you understand the underlining principles there. You begin to see how the heart, the attitude and direction of the heart of people really shine through. And to see how they've changed over time it's important that people change, but in the ways that they have changed have been the resultant of why I feel pity and disappointment for them. And that's happened with a lot of people. And it's so strange to see what matters to them in the end. But the end for me, what matters most is the attitude and direction of my heart, which sings for welfaring stewardship and to provide that as the living answer to the ultimate question of how do we, as a collective, create a collective cultural shift of the whole of humanity to align and in tune with an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful world. And I look forward to doing the good work to build that out in the coming years. With that, till next time, be well.